Hey everyone, welcome. This is Megan. I want to say hello and get you started for our virtual paint class and video recording today. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be painting a beautiful cabin in the woods. There will be a few supplies that you'll need for today's class, which I will review before we get started, and then we can kick things off. So, if you're new to these classes, I encourage you to always show up and be yourself. That's really the best pace that any of us can be as individuals and as artists. So I'll always remind you to take a deep breath and just follow your own intuition through our classes. It's really important that the more we paint and the more we practice our skills, that we just do what we're most comfortable with. Some of us may want to play it safe when we paint. Some of us may want to experiment with new shapes and forms or colors. So I just will always want you to keep that in mind as we paint together. All right. So one of the first things you'll need as you prepare your supplies, you'll need a canvas paper, something to paint on. You can use any size that you'd like. I typically use 11 by 14. It's a nice size. If you wanted to use something smaller or bigger, you certainly could. You also need paints of some kind. So you could use acrylic, watercolors. You could use pens. Any kind of mixed media you want to bring into this is absolutely fine. For today's class, I will be using acrylic craft paints. You can buy the fancy paints or you could use the paints at the dollar store. It does not matter. Any paint will allow you to put something on your canvas, play with manipulating colors, blending, and playing with different tones. So you need something to paint on. You need some paints. You need an array of brushes. You can get by in this class with just a few brushes. This is like a 1/2-inch flat tip brush. This is kind of my medium size. And then I have a small point brush. I'll probably grab a smaller point than this to use as well for some of the finer details. You will also need a cup of water to rinse your brushes. And you'll need a small plate to mix colors. And a paper towel for any messes. So today's scene is really simplistic and beautiful. I'm excited to introduce some different watercolor effects. So using water to kind of blend down colors to create different pigments. So I'll be doing some of that today. If you're not interested in using a lot of water to create lighter pigments, because we'll be doing some layering in the background first, you're welcome to just use more white to soften a color, okay? So for me, the primary colors that I'll be using today are greens and reds and browns, maybe a little bit of black. So colors that you'll need are always start with just the primaries, and in these classes I'll show you how to mix. So red, blue, and yellow, and then white and black. If you start any of my classes with those 5 colors, you'll be able to play with how to blend colors and mix them together, just in case you don't have a green. So in my classes, I always like to mix colors from scratch when I can to show you how to mix colors along the way. So the first one we're going to do together is we are going to make a green for our background. And this green is going to be very light in color, but we have to make a green first. So green, we always start with yellow. A dollop of yellow, and a small touch of blue. My yellow is like a sunshine yellow. Any yellow you have is fine. And a little bit of blue goes a long way. So do a little bit of blue right within the yellow. I'm going to use the biggest brush I have. Well, I'm using a 1/2-inch brush, which is ideal because we're not actually doing a full coat on the whole background. We're going to do very specific layering for this simple scene. Today's class is a little bit of a mix of a fun, easy inspiration and a little bit of detail, or in realistic. So it's a little bit of both. So this is might be a happy medium class for some of you. So the color here is like a medium tone green. So we're not going to put this color right on our canvas, but what I am going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this color and I'm going to put it in a nearby well. I can put a little bit over there, and maybe I'll just wipe my brush off here in the middle. So now I have green in a few different areas. just gonna set my brush down. I'm gonna grab some white paint and I'm gonna create a lighter tone of green. And I'm going to put my white paint in with one of the smaller bits of green. So I'm going for a lighter green in color. So you're going for like a light sagey green. And to get more of a gray tone, we'll add a little bit of black, but we'll do that after. Because we're going for like a light sagey green. So I'm just taking a minute to, actually fixing my paint, but take a minute to mix that light color. I'll be with you in just a minute. All right. So a little bit of white. I'll do this with you here in just a moment. All right, so like I have my white here. I'm gonna mix white with my green a little bit. So it's just a lighter color. Now so if it's not so like lime green, I'm actually going to, I'm gonna make it look a little bit more gray, have a gray tone. So I'm gonna put a tiny touch of black in this. And what we're doing is we're gonna be doing some lighter greens in the background first, and then we're gonna be layering on top of it with some darker, the next shade up of greens. But I do want it to have a little bit of a dark, like a, not dark, a little bit of a gray tone to it. So I'm just gonna put a tiny touch of black in another area of my canvas, of my plate. So you can see I have a little bit of black there. I'm gonna grab a corner of black and mix that in here to give it a gray tone. I'm gonna bring in just a little bit more. But I'm going for a nice light sage green color. And we're gonna do another shade of this a little darker, but just start here. Okay, and today's inspiration is really simple and will not be stressful. It'll be quite fun actually. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our paintbrush. You're gonna kind of wipe some of the paint off it so it's not too goopy. And in the center of the sky, maybe off-centered, in this space, we're gonna do a circle, and this is gonna be a moon. Okay, it's not perfect. I'm not worried about it. But what you can do is, and this is where we're gonna use a little bit of water. Think a little bit of, a little abstract, a little outside the box. We can always fix the shape a little bit after. But I'm gonna dip my brush in a little bit of water and wipe the water droplets off. So you can see my brush is wet, but it's not dripping. That's an important thing. And then I'm gonna slowly kind of loosen and create a little bit of a haze around this moon. Okay, it's okay if you have a little drip or not a big deal. Now I'm just gonna slowly, not gonna add any more paint to this brush, but I'm gonna get some more water on it, test the drip effect, and I'm just gonna do some like soft kind of cylinder, like there's gonna be trees back here. So we're gonna do some shaping, and you can kind of soften the edge of this with a little bit more water. See, I'm creating a little bit of a glow effect. It's just water, moving paint around. And you can go over this with your brush to kind of smooth it out a little bit. See this like little bit of extra glow we have? That's really cool. I'm not gonna go any farther than that, but I am gonna put a little bit of this green kind of all down here because I'm gonna put a tree right here. So wherever I'm gonna put a tree, you can grab a little water, a little bit more paint. You can play with how watered down you want this to be, but I want it to be nice and light. And I'm leaving a little white buffer on the edge over here. And I'm not gonna go down all the way. So one of the things you can do to ground yourself is there's a little hill down here at the bottom. I did kind of a little hill with the green just to say, hey, Megan, stay above this line with this green texturing. Okay. So we're going to do 4 or 5 trees here, but we're just going to do some long, skinny marks. And it's going to look, you know, a little unfinished. It's okay. We're going to do more on top. But this is just some kind of fun, and this is water and a little bit of this light green paint. And I'm staying above the hill. So I'm going to put one tree over here, another one's going to go right there. Experiment here. This part of this class is about experimenting with how much paint you use, how much water you use. I'm going and getting a little bit more water. You can kind of connect this area if you want. You can see I got a little dark here. I can use a little bit of water. You can see I'm intentionally keeping some white space in between the tree area. But you can make it as liquidy and flowy as you wish. Can't really mess up this part, I promise. You're just having fun. Okay, so you can see I'm just doing some nice shapes. And I'm staying above that line down here. And I'm going to make this a little straighter right here. You can always come in and refine some of this background too. So we're just really setting the scene. We're grounding the background with just some soft, subtle colors. And there's going to be another tree over here. So I'm just doing another tall one. So we're grounding the left and the right side of this canvas with 2 tall trees. So you can see how tall this one is going to be. And these are really like the background, like haze of where trees are going to be. We're not turning these green blobs into trees. We're actually painting green on top of it. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees. So there's a little one right here. And this is just the haze. Nice. And you can see this, the sun area for me is a little darker. It's okay. It can definitely be like a little darker if you want it to be. It doesn't matter. You can always change it if you need to. This is a personal choice, so no big deal. So I'm just kind of softening some areas. I have lots of brush strokes. It's okay to have brush strokes here. You can always use a little water to smooth things out. But just know we're going to come in here with another layer. So I'm going to make one shade a little bit darker. I'm adding a little bit more green to this lighter color. So I'm taking a little bit of this and I'm adding it to this over here just to make a little bit darker of a color. See how they're so similar? And then I want to make this be a little bit more gray. So I'm going to grab a tiny touch of black and mix that in here for it to have that dull gray tone. And I'm going to be playful on where I add a little bit of this. So I'm just going to do, and you can see how much darker it is. So I'm not going to do too much of it, but I am going to use this, my water, to blend this in. So it's not going to be brush strokes like this. So kind of use your water and just add a subtle, you can just do a little bit here and there, it's fine. Grab a little water, just kind of adding like a second colored texture to the background. And this is like a little outside the box, so if this is not like as structured as people want, you're welcome to just hang on tight. You'll be all right, I promise. This is just kind of a fun way to add some layering to the background as before we do our trees. I know many of the students in these classes like structure. This is a little bit more loosey-goosey. It's a little more of a watercolor technique. That's all right. It'll be all right. But you can see how it's adding just like a little bit extra dimension to this tree area. And we're going to paint trees on top of this, so don't worry too much. We're having fun. You can add in as much or as little of this like secondary dark color as you wish. So let's see, maybe I'll add a little bit extra here. And again, I'm putting paint down and then I'm going and getting water to help blend it in. And I'm putting a little pressure, telling this picture who's boss. See how I just added a nice little dark piece right there. That looks great. Doesn't look like much right now, but just trust the process. Like many of our classes, it's kind of a fun, different approach. We don't typically do things like this, so it's always fun trying different things. All right. So you're probably not going to know when you're happy or not at this point. So we're going to let this dry and we're going to transition to doing a little bit of a brown texturing with some water down here below. So wherever you're at, you can let it dry. Okay, I'm going to clean this brush and we're going to make a brown. So green and red make brown. So one of the things you can do is you can put a little tiny dollop of red on your plate. And if at any point you need to pause a video to take a little bit more time, feel free to do that. I always encourage you to do that in these classes. But we're going to do just a little bit of brown, and you're not going to need much at all. Actually, we'll use some reddish brown for the house too. So what I might do is I might take a scoop of this, like green that I have over here, and I'm just going to put it over here, and I'm going to grab a little bit of red, and I'm going to put a little bit of red in with my green, and this should give me brown. If it doesn't, you can grab a little bit more green. Just take a minute to mix brown. You can always bring in a little bit more yellow. So I kind of have a little bit of a brown. I personally want to make this like this brown that I have here a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow. This is for underneath this hill. So I'm just going to do a small dollop of yellow nearby, and then I'm going to grab the brush and just grab a little tip of this of yellow. Find a color that you like for the ground. That's the most important part. I'm grabbing quite a bit more yellow, but I think I need a little bit more red. So this is the time in the class, such a good example of just not rushing the process of finding the right color for you. There we go. It's finally turning into a little bit more of that reddish brown I was looking for. So find a color brown that you like. There are two ways to make brown if you like need to start over. Brown is red and green, or blue and orange, or you could mix blue, red, and green all together at the same time. So lots of possibilities here. So what I'm going to do for the bottom is I'm going to hold my brush on the side, and I'm going to do a single skinny brush stroke outlining this hill. Okay, and then I'm going to clean my brush to get half the paint off, and with a wet brush, check the drip factor, make sure it doesn't drip, and you're going to come in and you're going to softly buffer this down. So the darkest part of the hill is at the top, and I'm just softening. I'm keeping a white at the bottom. It's a little whimsical scene. Try doing a brush stroke from the left to the right. You can have the bottom be flat if you wanted to, nice and even. You could have it be like textured and a little drippy if you want. You can be playful with this. Like if you wanted to have like little bits of like drips kind of coming down, you could do something like this, just like little bits of drips. If you wanted to add like a little bit of fun texture, this is like a little bit of like a watercolor play. Just to kind of like break up the bottom a little bit. And I'm kind of pushing down on my brush and kind of letting the paint and the pigments form. These darker spots are like drips that are not going all the way. It's kind of fun. But that's it for the bottom for right now. Take a minute to play with that if you wish. If you don't like using this much water, you don't have to. You could just paint it brown. I don't care. It's all up to you. All up to you as always. And it's kind of fun seeing how the paint pigments kind of form and hold. And just leave those there and just see what happens. It's kind of fun. Okay. I'm just kind of dabbing them around a little bit, but I'm going to stop touching them just so everybody can see what happens when they dry. Okay, cool. So now that our hill is painted, we are going to do our trees. Now this is the part this is really what's going to ground the entire painting. I want you to find a small brush of choice. I have a 2/0 fraction brush. You could also use a number 1, just a small brush with a nice fine point. And we're going to start with a dark green color. So I have a green over here, quite a bit actually. I'm going to take a scoop of this and I'm going to put it over here in a clean area. And I'm going to take a scoop of my black and make a dark green color. Beautiful. It looks black on zoom, but it's just a beautiful dark green right here. I want there to be contrast. That is the goal. And we are doing skinny tree trunks down. So we're going to find, and then we'll do our branches after. And our branches are going to be a little whimsical. They're going to be a little different than our past branches. So I'll start on the right and work my way to the left. The first top of my tree is going to be up here, and it's going to be above the green. That's totally fine. Then I'm going to find the top of my tree, and I might put a little dot. And then I'm going to use a steady hand and just do a nice straight line down. There's no rush, take your time here. Perfect. The top of the tree is going to be skinny and the bottom of the tree is going to be a little bit thicker. So if you wanted to just give it a little bit of a wider trunk, a little bit. Our trees are going to be pretty dainty today, but you can decide like if you want them to be a little bit more full, you can do that. And I'm just connecting this tree to the ground, to the earth. We're going to do another tiny tree next to it. And I'm going to do it here. I might layer in another tree over here after, but we'll just kind of follow where I put my green spaces. So this next tree, it might come up, maybe it will come up, you know, towards the moon a little bit. So maybe it'll be, maybe I do a dot here. And then I do a straight line down. We're grounding the structure of our picture. You can kind of start to see already why we did that softening in the back. It's kind of neat. Take a minute just to fill in this tree trunk so it's nice and solid in color. And if you wanted to make the ground a little bit, or the bottom of the trunk a little wider, you can. So you're staggering the heights of our trees. So this tree maybe will start here. Just be confident with those lines down. my best advice. There we go. And then I'm going to do two more. I'm going to do a tall one, and I'll do a short one next to it. So my tall one, it's going to be tall just like the other one over here, but I'm going to just do a little bit shorter. Just go straight down, and then you can always fix your tree. You can always make it darker or fill in the line. And a small brush. I like to use my pinky to balance my hand on the canvas for stability. You may want to pick your canvas up and hold it. You may want to like lay it flat. Feel free to change your position as an artist so you are comfortable in the technique that you're painting. There, so there's one tree, and then I'm going to do one more smaller one. It's going to be in between these, and it's going to be shorter. So you can see our little forest is coming to life here. Go back, get a little more paint. Using my pinky to stabilize my hand. Making these lines nice and dark. It's going to ground the core of our tree. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to smile. You are enjoying yourself, I hope. Make the bottom of these tree chunks a little bit wider. So my trees are not all perfectly straight. It's okay. It's okay. So take a moment to finish those tree trunks. Again, pause the video if needed. And in just a moment, I'll start with the techniques for it's a different technique for our branches than we've done in the past. All right. So you're gonna use the same brush and the same color paint. And we're gonna start at the top of the tree, and you're gonna do a little swoop out, down and out. So maybe this one will be down a little bit more and out. And you're gonna create some texture on that branch. And then you're gonna do little straggly ones in between. So think about, they can kind of come down, and try having them come straight out a little bit. Some can be long, some can be short, but in between these long ones, do some shorter, straggly little branches. So these are going to kind of come straight out a little bit more. And see how they're not all exactly the same shapes. And you can also leave some gaps in between. So you don't need to have branches all the way kind of up on next to on another. And they're going to get a little longer as you work your way down, but these are pretty straggly. So this, for my style for this tree approach, is it's going to be a bare-like tree, not a full tree. So this is a little bit of a challenge. See if you can paint a different style tree than you've painted before. It's a little more sparse. Maybe this branch will hang down a little bit like it's broken. There's a lot of broken branches on trees, isn't there? Maybe it's a little more full. on one edge, right? So just alternate from the left to the right. Use the tip of your brush when you're painting. And just work your way down the tree. Lean back and reflect on your tree as you go. Try to create gaps in between. You can do some of these downward sweeps. Do little textures for your branches. Just using the tip of your brush. Don't do full brush strokes. And I'm not even going to go all the way down. So I might just stop right there. Maybe I'll do one more broken little twig. I'll end it with a little broken twig, okay? So whatever you do for your first tree, copy and replicate that for all your other trees. You can always come in and refine them, right? You can do a second coat. So the top side of these trees are going to be a little darker. We'll do that together after. Don't feel like you need to go in and like fine touch everything right now. I might make this tree a little taller, which is like a little bit of a broken one here. So really just kind of immerse yourself into this design or whatever design that you want to do. So again, the tops of these trees are nice and pointy. I'm working my way down, alternating. Broken branch, longer branch. Alternate to the other side. Use the tip of the brush. Maybe you get a little bit more paint. Work your way down the tree. Leave a little bit of a gap or a little bit of a space just to see what happens. You may live somewhere where the trees actually look like this, and you may not. So it's always fun to explore and do different scenes when we paint. So I like to do a little bit of a broken branch in between. Again, some of these can hang down a little farther. You can always come in and refine. I'm going to end with a little bit of a broken one, and I'm just going to stop. The tips of these branches can be a little long. There we go. Not a little long, pointy on the end rather. Okay, so you can always come in and do that after. Just give the end a little point if you wish. But take a breath, sit up straight. Maybe you need to mix a little bit more paint like me. Take your time with this. Mixing a little bit of black with a little bit of green. This is the detailed part of the class. Mixing paint, your color may be different. Guess what? That's okay if it's different. It's okay. It's just art. All right. I'm going to keep on plugging away. So alternating from the left to the right side. Finding a style that works for you. Broken little branch in between, pointy edge. Maybe there's some greens hanging down from one of your boughs. I'm painting with the tip of my brush. I'm not doing full brush strokes. Just creating texture from the end of my brush. It's good to have some of your branches kind of change angles a little bit. It will make your tree look a little bit more natural if you just change the angle of one of your branches. Maybe you paint a little owl or sitting on one of your branches at the end. That's always fun. So I'm getting a little wide with these branches. I got to cut it out a little bit. They're getting a little long. So I'm going to add some shorter ones here in a minute. Maybe there'll be like a low hanging one down here. And again, I'm going to get a little short and stubby as I finish this bottom of this tree. So I do want them to kind of match. So if I need to kind of equate and kind of make some changes, I can. Just lean back. For me, I'm looking for balance within my trees from side to side. So you can see they all match, but they're not exactly the same. Okay, and I'm just going to slowly keep working my way down. Find my next tree. Remember, I do a little broken branch in between. Little broken branch, I alternate from the left to the right. These are not very long branches. So you can I kind of like to lean back and reflect on how heavy the branch is, like if it needs a little bit more weight. Does the direction need to be changed a little bit? Also, always go back and get a little bit more paint. Pay attention to, again, the tip of the brush. There needs to be a little bit of a downward here. So I can make this tree a little taller if I need to. Right? And then this branch looks like a stick, so I'm going to make it a little bit more full. There we go, that helped. A little bit more full on the underside. I just do a little stick in between. This tree has a little more flavor. It changed a little bit. It's okay. It's okay if your tree changes. I'm just going to try to maintain a similar. Again, these branches were kind of coming out and flaring a little bit. So just try to go back to your roots on what your core design was. So for me, they kind of flared out a little bit. I have little kind of broken sticks in. They kind of hung down as I fill my branches in. It's okay to kind of reset yourself on your style. Don't get caught up with like how long or how little it's taking you. Just reset on the style and reflect again on that. Change the angle of your branch. Get a little bit more paint on your brush. Be a little bit loose with your brush strokes. Okay. See, I got a little longer over here. I really like that, so I might make these a little longer over here. It's where you can kind of change and evolve your art as you go if you want to. I'm not going to go too crazy, but I like how they're a little longer. Maybe these need to be a little longer. But lean back for perspective as you're making some of these choices. Okay. And if you have trees next to each other, it's okay to paint on top of the one next door. That is overlap, and overlap is good. It makes it look more natural. And if you want your branches to be filled in, like totally filled in, they can. If you want them to be like wispy and like a little transparent, that's okay too. So you can make those choices as an artist. There we go. And I'm pretty close here. So I'm happy with these trees. Take a minute to get your trees in. Again, super simplistic scene. You can see the green glows that we did behind are just kind of structuring the trees there. Absolutely. And once the trees dry entirely, if you wanted to go in and do some like softer greens to do more blending, you could, but we're gonna let these trees dry entirely. We are going to tuck in a little cabin here because our inspiration is cabin in the woods. So we've created our woods and we'll be tucking in our cabin next. If you wanted to, as you're doing these trees, if you wanted to take a little bit of like the lighter green and down here on the lower part of the tree, if you wanted to put a little bit of the lighter green in the center, creates just a little bit of highlighting. See that? We want to see the dark green on the left and the right. Did it just on the bottoms. You can decide if you wanted to put it anywhere further up top, but this is where I want you could take as much or as little time as you want playing around with these trees. If you're going to keep it simple, you can kind of keep it simple with me and kind of follow this step. If you wanted to use your small brush and go in and touch up your branches, many of you are likely going to want to do that. For me, I don't want to touch them too much because I don't want to change the shape. So I'm being really intentional. If I take a little bit of this dark green, maybe just making the top sides of these branches a little darker. So keep the same forms, and I'm just using a little bit of dark paint and just the tip of my brush, and I'm outlining the top side of these branches. So this is a really detailed step. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But if you wanted to kind of ground some of these like fuzzy areas, you can just use a little paint, this dark green, and I'm just outlining the tops of these branches, these little nicks and nubs of these trees. It will really just ground the top of that branch as an element. And you're not changing the branch. So you may want to change or modify some of your branches, that's fine. But if you like the way a branch looks, don't change the shape, just do a little bit of an outline on the top. And you can see how just crisp it's making these branches. And I'll bring my picture closer in just a minute for you to see these details. So you can see over here, some of these branches are lighter with a little bit of a dark green layer on top, like a small line outlining the top of these branches. They'll stand right out and they'll be a little bit more structured. So I would put yourself in a time box. Spend, 10 minutes. To do a little bit more detailed work if you want to. Take your time there. You could also use like a green pen. So like if you have like a dark green pen at home, let's see what this looks like. This is not dark enough, but if you wanted to use like a dark black pen and outline the tops, that would be a really cool thing to do. Maybe after the whole thing is done. I'm a huge fan of using ink to like outline designs. This would be a great inspiration to do that, to inspire you to think outside the box. You could also use just like a black ink pen too. If it's like a good quality pen, it'll actually work really quite well. Then I'm just gonna use the dark green paint and just do a simple line on top. I also have water on this brush, so it's not holding the paint as well. Make sure your brush is like not soaking wet, otherwise it's not gonna hold the paint. You might need to mix more dark green paint along the way. But take your time and enjoy these details. And as always, I want to thank you again for being here. I hope you're enjoying this time for you. But so far, I'm loving this inspiration, and I hope you are too. You probably didn't know where we were going in the beginning with the greens, but you can really see how the water wash is just emphasizing these tree structures. And some of you may or may not like it, and it's okay. It's good to try new things so you do figure out what you like and what you don't like, so you can do more of what you enjoy. That's what life's all about. That's why I like to emphasize the piece of like exploration and curiosity and being open-minded in these classes, because we learn a lot about ourselves when we just kind of are in the moment and we try new things. Okay. I feel like I could spend another hour painting the tops of these trees. But we're not putting anything else over these trees. So the benefit is you can always like change the shape of these a little bit. You can kind of add to them. So much you can do with these trees. I'm going to clean my brush. And we're going to do our little cabin next. So again, you're going to probably use the same brush. You need a teeny tiny brush for the cabin. If you would like to get a pencil and sketch your cabin, it might not be a bad thing. I like to use these mechanical pencils when they work. Let's see here. Grab a mechanical pencil, you can grab a regular pencil. There we go. So I will sketch. I'm going to use a pencil, but I'll bring it closer. To make your cabin look realistic, you want to have really straight lines. So it would not hurt to have a straight edge to do some of these straight lines. So kind of look around your studio, look around your house. I have a book right here, how convenient, that I can use to do straight lines. So first I'm going to say, where do I want, kind of how big do I want my house to be? So I'm going to tuck my house in right here. So it's going to be right about here. I'm just doing a couple little dots. And then I want the other edge of the house to be maybe over here. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to identify the front of the house. So the front of the house is going to be 2/3 of this. So, and you can figure out how high you might want it to be. So you're basically doing a rectangular shape. So I have a line here and I have a line here. The roof is going to come down on top of this, and I'll probably erase this line. But the roof of the house is going to be, for me, it's going to be up here. So you're kind of doing a triangle. If you want to be really exact, you want to find the center of your roof, so your roof is centered. But this is the pitch of the roof, so we're doing like an A-frame kind of style home. So the house, you can kind of play with this a little bit. So we're doing the peaked triangled roof here, and we're doing the peaked triangled roof here. And you're just going to want to look at it to make sure it's even, okay? So I'm going to erase any lines that I don't need. I don't need this one. Put a little pressure and that line will go away. And I'm not going to need this one. So I want a triangled peak roof, and rectangular sides. So it's kind of straight on the left, straight on the right, and then a peak roof right here. Okay. And then what's going to happen is we are going to connect. We're going to bring the house over. So the top of the roof is going to come over. You can figure out how far you want to bring it over. Maybe the tree will go behind it. And you just want to have a straight roof line. So you can see I have a little straight roof line here. And my house is going to come angled back this way. So my house is going to be a little bit bigger, but there's an angled line. So this angled line here is going to be the same angle as here. And then the back of the house is going to be here. So I'll bring this a little closer so you can see what my cabin in the woods looks like. So I have the front of the house is here. This is kind of straight edge, straight edge. And then I have a straight line back for the roof. And then the back of the house is angled. So this is an angled line here in the back. And I'll put a little paint on it so you can see it. And the back of the house is in a little bit. It's not from the back of the roof, it's from inward a little bit. So maybe I'll use a little bit of, let's see here. The house is going to be browned colors, so I might take a little bit of this green, a little bit of this brown, just to make like a darker color, just to show you what the outlines are so you can see my outlines. And I'm going to make this a little darker. I'm just using brown and green and black just to kind of create a darker color, just to show you. And you want a really tiny brush. So I'm being really careful of spinning this brush so it's not too goopy. And I'm just going to outline the lines that I just did so you can see where my house is at. But take a few minutes to draw your house. Get your lines right. You can decide if you want to paint on top of your trees or behind. I'm painting my house on top of these trees. Nice straight lines, that will be really good. So this is the side of my roof. That's the top of my roof. This is my cabin, which I quite like. Right, and then for me, the roof is here, so the house is actually going to start back here. Because I want my roof to come down. Actually, I think it's on this side. Yeah, my roof is going to kind of hang over. You can kind of play with the lines a little bit. The roof is going to hang over the side. There. And it's kind of tucked into the hill a little bit, but you can play with how straight your lines are to really structure your house. So you can play with those lines. This line here looks a little off to me. Looks like it needs to be a little straighter. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more and make that a little straighter. See that simple adjustment I did? It's all good. Okay. So for me, I am gonna, I'll let this dry for a minute, the lines I just did, because then we can kind of fill it in. If you wanted to put a little chimney on the back, you can do like a little rectangle on the back with like a little smokestack. You can just do a little line maybe coming up. And we'll fill this in so it stands out a little bit more. I'm also going to do some windows. So let's see, I'm going to paint on top of this tree because the tree is going to fall behind. So I'm going to paint a door. And I'm going to just do a small window. Right, there's my cabin. So fun. My house is a little bigger than I intended, but it's okay. It doesn't matter how big your cabin is. It really doesn't. And then you can decide what color you want your cabin to be. I have a little red. I have a little bit of brown. I'm going to do a little brown, a little red, and a little white. You can start filling in the house color. It's kind of like a log color, I guess. Any color you want. I'm going to do, I'm just going to paint it in, and then I can do little like log-like details if you wanted to make it like a little log cabin. So find a color that you'd like for your house. To make this color, I used brown and red and a little bit of white. But I'm doing a base house color first. It will really allow our house to come to life. Painting around my windows. And the reason I put the windows in, because I wanted to hold that light color without having to like fill in the windows, aka the lighter color of the green. We can always put like a yellow inside the windows, like there's people inside and there's lights on. So many opportunities with our little cabins here. And then once we have our house painted, we'll do our roof, which is going to kind of overlap our house in some areas. So that's why it's good to paint the house first. And I'm going to paint the side of the house. I love the color choice. It adds just a little pop of color to this really neutral scene. Really like it. Some of you may have done a brown house. Some of you may have done a blue house. This is your cabin. It can be any color you want it to be. But this cabin is where we all go just to reset. Maybe there's a little studio in here for you. Maybe there's your favorite books. It's always fun to think about what you would have in a little cabin. See, my cabin is evolving. My roof is hanging over the side of the house. So that left beam of the house is on the interior of the point of the cabin. See that? See how this line is to the right? You can always change that if you need to. So my little cabin's coming to life. My cabin roof is a little more brown, maybe like a light brown. So I'm gonna just paint the roof. First, I'll paint inside of my little chimney. View an outline for a chimney. Keep those black lines around that. And then I can paint around that chimney. Keeping these lines. So my roof is brown. And I had like a nice light brown. Keeping these dark lines, ladies and gents. That will help hold the structure of our home. And our cabin is appearing before our eyes. How magical. Now this is your picture. So I'm doing some nice smooth brush strokes, horizontal brush strokes. You can always touch up any of the roof line detail. You could probably do 2 coats. You can decide these things. All right, I have a window that there's like a tree in the middle of my door, so I'm gonna fix that. I'll probably paint my door like a light brown. It's the big door. Maybe I'll put a little window at the top of the door. Maybe I'll do some detail work on my door. You can decide. This is a great opportunity to use like a pen, like a dark pen, to do some detail work. So I just got these pens. These are like fine liner soft grip pens. So what I could do is, as this is drying, I can just like leave it. And then I could use a dark ink pen. I might actually let it dry. The front of my house is almost dry and the side of my house is almost dry. So I'll let this dry. And then I'll do some like log-like detail on the house with a pen so you can see what a pen looks like. It also gives you a little bit more control than the tip of a brush. If you have really fine brushes, you're probably fine. But for people that don't, go to your junk drawer, find an ink pen, find a black one, and try using that. If it's a nice pen, test the pen out first. To do maybe outlines on the windows, do some door-like detail. It's really, really fun. But before you do any pen, make sure you have your coverage down well. So if I was going to do this right, I would do another coat of paint for the house, which I'll do. I'll do a second coat. I'm mixing a little bit more paint because I ran out. Okay, I'm going to do a second coat of my house. This color is a little bit more mauve, but it's similar. Second coat will really hide any trees that you basically painted over and give it a nice solid coat. And how much fun is this? I love this inspiration. I hope you all are enjoying this as much as I am. Some of you have been asking for our cabin in the woods for such a long time. So thank you for your patience. I think this was worth the wait. Love this. So I did a second coat for my house. I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna do the due diligence of doing a second coat for my roof as well. Because I could see a tree back there. Heavens forbid. My roof is a little darker with this color, so I'm gonna try to, there we go. Do some nice smooth brush strokes. I'm gonna re-outline my chimney. I really like the dark outline chimney. If you have too much paint, just wipe some of it off, like get it on your brush and then clean your brush off. Nice smooth brush strokes. Soft glides across your subject to make it nice and even. So my chimney's still in there. I'm gonna let everything dry. If I wanted to like reshape my windows a little bit, I could. If I wanted to be really detail oriented, clean up my brush. I will show you the ink detail as things dry here. I'm gonna make sure my windows are the shape that I want them to be. So I just got a little bit of this green and I'm just gonna focus on the windows. I can always go around them again with darker paint or that black outline. But I want to be happy with the shape of my windows, the size. You can ask yourself, do they need to match? Is that important to you or not? You could always add a little bit of yellow and white to the interior of your windows to have a little bit of a glow factor. Doesn't love a little warm, cozy cabin. Put a little white and yellow just tucked in. The more white you add, the more these are going to stand out. So you can play with that if you want there to be a subtle glow or it to be a little bit lighter. Okay. I'm going to do door detail and house detail with my black ink pen, but I'm going to let this dry. This is where you can use the next however number of minutes to refine any of your branches. My house is almost dry. I definitely want it to be dry before I do my pen, but I know my front door is dry, so I can use this pen to outline my front door. You can think about what designs you may want to put on your front door. Maybe I'll do, let's see. could do the typical like barn X, or you could just do like a little window with maybe like a little bit of a design below with a little doorknob, right? You probably can't see this. I'll do it with you in a moment. You can, if your roof line is dry, you can outline your roof line with an ink pen. I'm gonna outline my chimney and my smokestack. And you want to stay on your house. You don't want to go up into the forest here. You could do like a double outline of these like black pillars if you wanted to, like up the sides of your house. I'm kind of outlining one side of the black line, I was outlining the other. The peak of the house. Okay, you can see my house is really starting to stand out. I am going to do some other lines. Let me see. I actually have a brown pen, so most of you probably don't have a brown pen. I'm just going to see what a brown pen looks like for some of this crosshatch. Yeah, it works. You could definitely use your black or your brown. The brown is a little more subtle. I'm just doing horizontal lines, working my way across the house. The brown is actually very subtle, you can't even see it, so I might need to go over it, but I'm just gonna see how it looks once I'm done here. So you can see it. I think it's fine. I'm going to do horizontal siding. I'm freehanding this. If people want to do use a ruler, feel free. So I used a brown pen. You could use a dark pen. I'll use a darker pen for my windows and for the roof, so you can see what that looks like. My windows also need to be outlined. I do like the black though, I'm not gonna lie. Look at those windows, they're so cute. You can figure out if you want to do like little shutters or not. For the roof, I could do just plain lines, but I could also do like little scallops too. So this is where I have to figure out how fancy I want to get or not. Let's just do, all right, I'll get a little fancy just to see. Hey, why not? I'm doing little scallops. I think the straight roof line would have been fine, but I'm committing to my decision. And guess what? If I don't like this, I can paint over it, because that's the beauty of acrylic. So my roof wasn't dry yet, excuse me. So it's not really sticking, but that's my scalloped roof. I'm like mediocre, like it or not. I'm gonna let my roof dry and then I'll come back to it. If you wanted to do like tiny little black shutters, you could. This is if you have a pen, of course. If you wanted to do like a line through each of the windows, like they roll up, you could do something like that. But this is our inspiration. It was a little bit of everything, right? We used a little water, we used a little like full pigment paint, We had some large coverage areas. We had some detail work. You could, again, go in with your brush or with your pen and do some, like a black outline on the tops of these trees. With your black pen could look really cool just on the top side of these branches, excuse me. So fun. It just really adds some structure to the tops of these elements. But this is exploring with all the different things you can do with creativity. So I encourage you to be playful where you want to. I love a little bit of a black outline on the tops of these. They're so cool. This is just, I'm just using a black ink pen. This is kind of a fancier pen, but you can look here. There's a little bit of a black outline. It's a subtle difference, but I like it personally. My roof is still wet. Here we go. Let's see here. Oh, it's not happy. If your paint isn't dry, your ink is not going to set. This is what rushing is. This is what not to do. That's why I do it, right? To show you all the different ways of doing things. Come down to these trees. But I want to thank you so much for being here. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up. Show me some love. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I'd love to keep you all connected. We have some free classes coming up, as well as some additional announcements for future classes. But I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to comment below or reach out to me directly. But thanks again for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks all.